All right, welcome to week number 5, and this week we're focusing on sound. And you see things are a little different. I have my headphones on. I am listening to myself currently talk into a microphone mounted on my camera. And this is not my computer, this is my camera. I use it professionally, and so it has audio inputs, it has microphone inputs, and that might be different than what you have. So don't be scared off by this. I'm just going to talk about some things in relation to sound. In my travels, I was a camera guy, and I spent most of my time with cameras, but I worked with plenty of sound professionals who they just lived in the world of sound. That's all they worried about. There's a lot of things that sound professionals worry about. For instance, cable. Sound cable is so important. You can get away with camera cable usually is only powering something or it's feeding an image, but sound cable is capturing the sound, so you have to be very careful of it. Even one of these tiny wires inside of one of these things gets bent or damaged and the whole sound is ruined. So sound people, sound professionals will be very upset with me for this mess that I've got here. Okay, so it's a different world and it's very separate. So let's talk about more of a layman's terms. What do we have to work with? So right now I'm talking into a microphone. It's called a shotgun mic. I'm going to pull it out for a second and you're going to see it. I'm going to demonstrate something for you. Okay, you hear that sound. This is a microphone that looks like this. It mounts on my camera, and you notice it's facing now perpendicular to me. That's what microphones that are like this are designed to do. They're designed to point and shoot. If I transition over here, you see the sound quality got significantly better and clearer because it's now pointing at my mouth. That's a directional microphone. When you point it away, or even opposite direction, we lose the sound. But it comes back at you and you have a very different sound. I'm probably even too loud at this point. But this is a shotgun mic because it shoots a very limited spray at some focal point. Now I'm going to switch to the camera mic. You're going to see a difference here. Now we have a very different sound, don't we? This sound is off the front of the camera, and this is probably more like what you're going to be used to. Your phone, if it's your camera, is also your microphone. Same thing with a flip camera or any sort of point-and-shoot camera. Most of them operate from a microphone that's right on the camera. You're going to hear me get right close to it. There's the microphone on the camera, and there's my chin. This is a tough way to record sound because there's a lot of space between me and the microphone. So let's talk about your interviews this week. If this is all you have to work with, then it's about setting up a shot that gets you your best sound. So again, the closer I move, the better the sound quality. So you notice now we have a close-up, but we do have better sound. If I'm back here, we've got a lot of extra sound going on here. So space is really important when we're talking about a camera and a microphone being in the same device. There's other microphones as well. Not only do we have this shotgun mic, which is not plugged in anymore, we have the mounted mic. We also have omnidirectional mics. They look like this. These are great for interview mics. Alright, so the reason why they're different than the shotgun is this design sort of shoots a sort of almost circular directional sound pickup. It's designed to be sort of in the same vicinity and pick up relatively the same sound around the microphone. These are great for interviews, and if you have one, fantastic. But if you don't, it is something that you don't necessarily need, depending on sort of your setup with your interview. But they often, like this one in particular, comes with an input like this. So if your camera or your phone even has a jack that looks like this, you might be able to get an external mic if someone has one lying around. This one's a not very expensive one. We also have what are called lavalier mics. So lavalier mics are the ones you see often in interviews. They're small, tiny like this, and they usually go to a wireless receiver. This is a transmitter. So this transmits this sound that comes out of this, and it's usually put on a lapel, usually tucked down the shirt, and usually an interviewee tucks it in their pocket. No one ever even knows it's there, or they can barely see it. Not everyone has these. This is a great interview mic. It's also a great sort of hidden mic when you can't get, you're shooting from far away and you want someone talking, but you don't want a person in the frame who's got a big microphone in their face. Fantastic. And this is wireless, so this would send out a signal that would be picked up by this, and this is mounted to the camera. Not going to happen for most of you, I get that, but I wanted you to at least see the item. So in terms of sound, you do the best you can, and you try to get as much information as you can. Again, closer is better when we're talking about the microphone on the camera, but then we also have to deal with how close it is. This might be a little too close for an interview. It's all on you, the filmographer here, the videographer, to figure out how you're going to match both. Because those of us who aren't sound professionals, this is what we do. We work with what we have. Two more points I want to talk about briefly is, number one is B-roll. Now, I don't know if you're going to hear enough about it in the videos this week, but I just briefly touch on it. B-roll is about getting the rest of the story. So let's say you go to someone's house. You came to my house to interview me. There's a house behind me. There's a design. There's an environment. And B-roll is about picking that stuff up before you even begin the interview. So if I'm sitting there and I'm setting up and I see children's toys on the floor, which there are because I have two young girls. If I see woodwork that seems to be taken care of and well stained, that might tell a story about who I am. When we're interviewing, if we're down and we're not talking, a shot of my hands, a close-up of my hands and how I hold them. Or maybe a lapel, like a collar that's sticking out. Maybe that might tell a story. Or maybe just if you catch a moment where someone's thinking. You can use that use that later. We're always looking for shots that help tell a story. It might be the front of the house before we even get in. These are things it's called B-roll. B-roll is about all the extra information you can get that will some point later on help you edit. It'll fill in for a moment when the sound was bad, or you were zooming into a shot and it looks kind of choppy and shaky, but you need that audio. Well, a shot of some sort of B-roll item, hands, environment, wildlife if we're out in the woods, all that is going to help later on in the editing process. That's B-roll. And then the last thing I want to talk about really is the idea of the interview itself. Interviews are tough. Warm up your interviewee. And don't be afraid to move the camera in and out. You can always cut over it, or you can find a way to put something in there, a picture of your subject, or again, B-roll. Don't be afraid to move the camera in and out because you want to have the illusion that you have more than one camera working. It's effective at making an interview dynamic. You don't want to watch the same frame for 4 minutes. Nobody does. It's just, it might be compelling, but very little information is that compelling. All right, I think that's it for this week. Pay attention to sound. Oh, one more thing I wanted to talk about, now I remember, is Foley art. It touches on it this week in some of the videos, but I just wanted to make sure that everyone knew that there was this whole art that happens without the camera. It's actually after everything's been shot on the camera. And it's people who literally, their profession is taking images that have already been shot and been cleaned up and edited, and they add the sound in a studio, usually with junk or just sort of random items floating around. It's a pretty amazing world, and I actually did have I had a relative who worked for Skywalker Sound at one point, and all they did was walk around with their headphones, and they had their little microphone, and they would look for sound. And lo and behold, I think one of their claims to fame was a movie called Judge Dredd, which was a Sylvester Stallone movie. There's a futuristic motorcycle that Judge Dredd drives around. Well, the sound, the motorized sort of whir sound, really was just the rusty sort of steel door to an old battleship wreck, opening and closing, and then digitized and repeated. So there's people who are doing sound in cinema that don't even have anything to do with what we're doing right now. So there's a wide range. Amazing field. And Certainly not something I'm an expert at, and nor have I ever been someone who's excellent at it, but I do know that there are tools to have. So good luck this week. Hopefully, if you're lucky, you have some ability to play with microphones. Other than that, you do the best you can. So good luck.